In this video, we're going to examine the relationship between the interest rate and income, focusing on the goods market, where expenditure takes place. Remember that there's a relationship between income and interest rate in the money market. We're going to come back to that later on. As income rises, interest rate rises because people demand more money. We're going to come back to that. For now, we want to know if interest rate changes, how it affects expenditure on goods and services, and therefore the level of income. We've seen this before in the context of the crossing point between the 45-degree line and D curve. We want to examine that relationship in more detail. If the interest rate goes up, we've seen in the previous video that it leads to an increase in aggregate preferred expenditure for every level of income, and therefore an upward shift in the D curve. As the interest rate goes down, real investment goes up, and that increases aggregate preferred expenditure. Also recall that the exchange rate depreciates as well, and that causes the real exchange rate to depreciate, causing the net exports to go up. So both these effects increase aggregate expenditure, D, and the whole curve shifts up. The impact on the equilibrium will be an increase in the level of income as a result of a decline in interest rate, which also implies a depreciation of the currency in the spot market. So let's examine this graphically. Start with the D curve and the 45-degree line. Interest rate goes down from I0 to I1, and that leads to an increase in expenditure on investment and net exports, and D curve shifts up. The equilibrium level of income goes from D0, Y0 to Y1, D1, just like that. Now, let's map this as a relationship between real income and nominal interest rate. Suppose interest rate is initially I0. We find the equilibrium using our crossing point, Y0, and now we'll reduce interest rate to I1. That leads to an increase in income to Y1. So a decrease in the interest rate increases income. And the effect, remember, is through investment and net exports. And vice versa. As interest rate goes up, real income goes down. And we can trace the points that represent the combination of interest rate and income here, and any other point in between. This relationship, this curve that we derive in this way between income and interest rate, is called the IS curve. It's just a name, IS. It refers to preferred investment being equal to preferred savings. Remember that in the previous course we showed that investment is always exactly equal to investment. Here, this curve represents the amount that people would like to save being exactly equal to the amount that they would like to save. Same relationship, but in terms of preferences being exactly what has to happen in the economy, investment being always equal to savings. Let's now put together the IS curve with what we did before in the previous course, deriving a relationship between interest rate and income in the money market. We called that LM. The IS curve represents the relationship between the interest rate and income, the income level that would prevail in the economy, in the goods market, given the interest rate. So in the goods market, in goods and services market, interest rate drives income. Remember that in the money market, the relationship is the opposite. It's the income level that drives interest rate. And that's a positive relationship. As income goes up, interest rate is driven up, given the level of money supply and price level and other factors. So that's our LM curve. Now, if we put these two together, the economy would be in equilibrium if both the money market and the goods market are at the same time in equilibrium, which can only happen if these two curves are crossing. So the equilibrium level of interest rate and income are determined jointly in the goods market and the money market. In one market, in the money market, income drives interest rate. In the goods market, interest rate drives income, and putting the two together tells us what level of income and interest rate are consistent with each other in the economy as a whole. That determines the short-run equilibrium given the price level and given other parameters of the model that we've discussed before. This is the main tool that we're going to use for our analysis of short-run equilibrium of the economy. So what happens if the economy is not in equilibrium initially? How does it get to equilibrium? To examine this, let's look at this case where the economy is initially at this red dot. Income is at Y1 and interest rate is at I1. What happens in this situation? Notice first that in this economy, the money market is out of equilibrium. The interest rate is way too high for the level of income. High interest rate means that it's worthwhile to buy bonds, so demand for bonds goes up, and that lowers the interest rate. Because the money market clears very quickly, usually this happens within days, at the level of income Y1, you're going to see interest rate drop until it reaches the LM curve. So interest rate I2 will prevail in the economy very soon if we start at point I1. But the economy is not going to stay at interest rate I2 and real income Y1. The reason is that at this level, interest rates are too high to sustain an income level like Y1. In fact, at I2, the equilibrium level of income that can be sustained in the economy is Y2, which is far lower than Y1. If that's the case, then income is lower and people don't need to hold much cash, so they're going to be even buying more bonds and driving down the interest rates. But this time, as the interest rate drops, income is also declining. Money market is staying in equilibrium, and therefore the economy moves down the LM curve towards the crossing point with IS curve and eventually arrives there. This process is not immediate. It takes sometimes 6 months, could take 9 months, a year. The move from any point away from the money market equilibrium to the LM curve is quick, but the rest of the path could take time because, for example, if income is less than expenditure in the economy, then businesses have to lay off their workers, stop buying, or their profits are going to go down, and that takes time to show up as an effect on aggregate expenditure.